The following is a production of Texas Lutheran University. For more information, please visit tlu.edu.
Please welcome Deborah Martin. She is the, I put her bio up just in case some of you aren't familiar, but I think most of you are. She is, guys, you see so much theater in a year's time. She's kind of a staple of our world, but she also reviews the touring shows and all of those things as well. And so she's got quite a deep handle on theater criticism, which was chapter 2. Yeah, we're reading. But with no further ado,
So I always feel like with these things, they're better if it's more of a conversation, especially since I am so late, so that you can get exactly what's helpful for you. So I mean, I have some notes based on the things that the issues that Shannon had suggested you were interested in. But really, if there are specific things you're interested in hearing about, sing out whenever, and I'll answer them. Again, especially since we have less time than we should have. So is there anything like right from the top, or do you want me to just go?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So
Thank you.
Thanks for coming out today.
Thank you.
I was wondering if how the audience is reacting during the play ever affects how you feel about it, or if you have your own opinion without how the audience is reacting.
That is a very good question. Sometimes it doesn't necessarily affect the opinion, although if I feel like the audience response is way at odds with my response to it, like if it's a comedy and I'm watching it and I'm like, okay, that's not funny, and the audience response is really big, I might mention that. I might mention that, if you are the kind of person who, hopefully in a less obnoxious way than this, if you are the kind of person who finds a play called Things My Grandma Said or whatever entertaining or appealing, you will probably find this funny. And again, hopefully in a much less obnoxious way than that. But it's a particularly good question because recently I gave another talk somewhere else, and someone who is an actor in San Antonio told me that someone who no longer produces in the city used to apparently, if he was doing a comedy, he would seat people around me who had a really big laugh and then encourage them to really, really laugh. So that makes me a little more suspicious than I was before, especially at comedies. So if there's a huge response, I think, okay, that's probably not true. There's another theater that used to, there'd be huge responses to what was going on stage, but it was usually way in the back. And if the theater wasn't packed, you're saying, oh, okay. And that may not have been for me, that may have just been for the actors. I'd like to think that was for the actors, but it could have been a little sweetening. So I do pay attention. And sometimes also it's a matter of sort of thinking, well, okay, everybody else seems to be having an amazing time, and I am not. So is it the play, or it could also be me? I mean, did I have a really crappy day, and I'm just shut down? Then I have to kind of pull it together and find it somewhere inside myself to really respond to what they're doing instead of to what happened 20 minutes ago. And sometimes that is a challenge, and you just have to suck it up. And, it is unfortunate, but, I see probably about 100 shows a year, and sometimes I'm not delighted to be there, I will admit. But the great thing about my job is that sometimes if I've had a crappy day and I've thought, the last thing I want to do is go see this thing, hopefully it's such a great show that within a few minutes of it, it pulls me in and it doesn't matter. And it really doesn't matter. And I've had so many experiences like that, which that makes my job really cool. The other stuff makes it slightly less cool. But yeah, I do kind of pay attention. And there are some things that are just never going to make sense to me. People weep at river dance, and that doesn't. Okay. I don't get that, but I'm glad they are moved by it. That's great. They're having a response that, again, I don't connect to it quite that way. Cats doesn't quite make sense to me either, but but people love it. So and the thing about Cats is I actually did finally see a production of Cats that was fun, and I thought, wow, that's a good reminder that even the stuff that you think, I can't see that again. You can go and see something fresh. I mean, that's the great thing about theater is hopefully the next company will have a handle on whatever you're seeing that's different. And, that doesn't often happen with Cats, which I've probably seen 90 times. But, it does happen. So are there other things that, yes?
If you're going to write the review of that play,
Mm-hmm.
do you sometimes watch more than once before you write the review?
I do not. And I will say, sometimes it's crossed my mind that it would be helpful. I will say that there are things that I really enjoyed that I'd like to see a second time. But I just kind of have to really pay attention. I try to prep as much in advance before I go. I might read the play. If it's a difficult piece, I might read stuff about the play. Attic Rep did the goat, or Who is Sylvia? Do you all know that piece? Guy has a relationship with a goat. It's it's not about that. That is what happens. It's about tolerance and that kind of thing. It's a really, really good play. But because of the content, I felt like I need to read interviews with Albee about his intent, about what he was hoping to communicate before I went to it. Because then also I can concentrate on something other than the plot and, is that his second cousin? And why is he wearing a top hat and that kind of stuff? Prep work helps make sure that I don't feel, hopefully when I leave, I don't think, I really should have known more about that going in. So you had.
What's your quality gradient? Like, how do you decide whether it's good? Is it just whatever makes you feel good, or if it checklist?
That's a good question. I don't really have a checklist. I think I've been doing this long enough that I do have certain expectations for certain theaters. And the expectations differ because I think they all have different ability levels, skill levels, which hopefully with the ones that are maybe a little lower, they're going to exceed, which would be great. But, I'm looking at, my baseline, I think, is I'm looking at things that keep you in the reality that's there. Little touches, like the Sheldon Wexler Theater at the Jewish Community Center does really good stuff. And the design is so good. There's such attention to detail. Like if they're doing London Suite, which is set in a hotel, he will have on the back of the door, the little thing on the back of a hotel room door that has your checkout time and your fire route. Like that's a tiny thing. But that is the kind of thing that sort of wedges in your head, and the whole time you're there, you were in that room. You're not thinking, well, why is he warming his hands over a fireplace that clearly has nothing in it? Why, the kinds of things that sort of, for lack of better phrasing, I might deduct points for, are things that pull you out. Things that, like a few years ago, somebody did a production of Rent. And that there's the big opening number, we're not going to pay next year's rent, whatever. And before that, you have all the phone calls from the parents and everything. So for the we're not going to pay next year's rent, whatever, the mother of one of the kids was in that number. It's like, well, Mark's mom, rent is not a concern for Mark's mom. Why is Mark's mom in this scene? And I found myself fixating on Mark's mom, who was dressed in a very distinctive way. So they didn't even take the poncho off. And it's like the whole time I was like, are there problems with Mark's mom? Is this like a different direction for this play? What is going on? Those are the kinds of things I think, okay, that's something they need to focus on. That's a lack of attention to detail. And once that happens, I will admit I start looking for the other things. And in that production, there's Mimi comes in and she's flirting with the guy after the power goes out. She actually had knee pads on, like visible knee pads, because she was going to crawl around on the floor. But it's like, okay, a different costuming choice, perhaps. Because the whole time you're just looking at the knee pads going, okay, this is going to be a long night. So those are the kinds of things. That's sort of a baseline. I'm looking at performances, obviously. If there's somebody who's, sometimes especially in a big ensemble with a community theater show, there might be some smaller roles that aren't quite up to the others. And if it's a tiny role, I probably won't mention it. But if it's somebody who's sort of blatantly out there, when I worked for a paper in El Paso for a long time, and they do a summer Shakespeare. And there was a guy in I think it was The Tempest, near the end where there was like the big reunion or whatever, and one of them had this this really thick accent. I think that's just how he spoke. But it's like, hail there, it's like, okay, that was jarring. So I think that got, if I remember correctly, I think that got a mention. It's like, whoa, that's not Shakespeare. And it was in their setting. I mean, they didn't set it in South Texas or West Texas. It was, okay, that removes me from the magic a little bit. So those are kind of things I'm looking for. I'm looking at design. I'm looking at, and again, I'm looking at the stuff they're doing well, too, the stuff that keeps you in the reality. And I'm so glad some of you guys are going to go see Salesman. It's just, unless things have gone horribly wrong since last weekend, I should say that because, things happen. It's really good. It's really, I walked out of the theater and felt like, wow, I didn't even realize how much time had passed. It was crazy good. Yes?
I have a question. Have you ever had to deal with threats due to bad reviews or anything?
Not so much threats, but I've gotten some very angry emails. Every now and then somebody gets very unhappy. If it's maybe at this level of unhappy, they might send me an angry email. They might send me a message through Facebook that is very angry. If the anger reaches another level, they might send a note to my editors, strongly suggesting I should not have the job that I have. Someone fairly recently had emailed me and said that she said that every review I had done of their shows at this theater was terrible. I always give them a bad review, and the only conclusion she could come to was that I had something personal against them. And what I did not say was that is not the only conclusion you can draw from that. But I just didn't, she had some other issues, so I just addressed the other issues and thought, because I can't really say, that's ridiculous, because that also feeds into that. It does not happen too often. I mean, I'm pretty careful with tone. And I try to respond to people. But yeah, every now and then people do get very upset. And I will say I get that. It's so hard to put on a show. It's so much work, and it's weeks and maybe months of your life. And then this person from the newspaper who wasn't there at 2 o'clock in the morning hanging lights sits there and goes, eh. That would be really galling. That would be, so I get it. So I try not to respond in a flippant way. I try to thank them for writing. And I also, if someone writes to me, it also gives me a chance to look at what I'm doing, because maybe they have a point. That particular person didn't have a point. But every now and then I'll think, okay, yeah, I could have, I maybe could have phrased that differently. It wouldn't affect the opinion, but, maybe phrasing. Yes. Hi. Yeah, you, I'm sorry.
What made you just want to write about art?
My first newspaper job, I was a calendar clerk. I compiled calendars for a newspaper, and I started writing stories, and I really didn't think this is what I was going to do, but the more that I did it, I just really loved it. I will say I'd spent some time as a cop reporter, and it's really, really nice when the murders are fictional and people are actually sort of happy when you show up for the most part, and people are not like, ugh, no, we can't tell you anything. Instead, people are like, let me tell you everything. And that's kind of awesome, actually. And it's not generally terribly draining. It's a fun thing to write about. I get paid to go to the theater. That is not a bad deal. So, and there are far worse things to do. I kind of feel like I have the best job at the paper. So, Yes.
I was wondering how, since 1999, have you kind of gained momentum in respect and stature in this community?
That is such a sweet question. Thank you. Well, I think that, see, now I feel like I just brag about myself here. Well, I mean, I think I've tried to maintain a high profile in the community. I see as much as I possibly can. If you know, there are occasionally weekends where like 9,000 things open and I can't get to everything that weekend, I do try to circle back and at least see the shows, even though we've already written about them. I hope that sends a message that I care about what's going on and that I want to see what they're doing. I try to, you know, I try to meet with people as much as possible. If somebody invites me to a rehearsal, I am there. Every now and then someone will actually let me sit in on auditions, which makes me a little uncomfortable because the actors have to be so vulnerable, and I know that I change the chemistry of the room. I mean, the fact that they would trust me enough, that's fantastic. I mean, I try to maintain connections. I try to keep in touch with what they're doing. That's part of the reason also, if they have a complaint, I try to respond to it, and I try to respond to it in an honest way. I try to watch tone in the reviews. I try not to be nasty just for the sake of being nasty. Just because I also wouldn't be nasty for the sake of being nasty face to face. You know, I wouldn't go up to you and say, your baby's ugly. You know, so I'm not gonna say, God, that sucks in the paper in those words. Now, that could be subtext, but I'm not gonna write it that way. I hope that they realize that I really respect what they do, because I do. You know, I go, every now and then I'll do a series of blog posts like I did when Shannon did Spring Awakening at the Playhouse, where I look at the process. And so, I mean, that's a commitment for me, and I think they appreciate that. I mean, that's, you know, I generally work a pretty full day. And so if I'm at the Playhouse at 6, I've already put in a full day. And I realize they have also put in a really full day. So I feel like we're kind of, maybe not on the same place exactly, because obviously they're working 8 million times harder doing the work than I am taking notes. But hopefully that conveys that that I'm with them, you know, and I respect what they do, and, you know, so I'm hoping that's what, but again, there are some people who are not thrilled with what I do, but what are you gonna do? Yes?
Thank you for coming out today.
You're welcome.
And do you think that you've ever lost friends based on a review? Or I don't know, if you're friends with the people who work or
I think that there are, I think that if I don't know if I've lost friends per se, but I will say if I've written a review of something that wasn't particularly flattering, I might back off from them. Like I would give them some time for things to settle before maybe going up to them. But I mean, I hope that they appreciate that I don't have a gotcha mentality. I don't think I have an antagonistic relationship with them. Just like after someone has sent me a really nasty note, I'm hoping that there can be some time before we connect again. Someone several years ago had sent me and everyone in the theater community actually a really, really scathing email. He was very, very unhappy with a review of his performance. And he actually came up to me the next time we crossed paths, which was a few years later or so, you know. He had calmed down a little bit. And he apologized I think he was apologizing just for maybe tone. And that's fine. And I appreciate that he expressed himself. I would have liked for him to maybe express himself in a slightly less public way with maybe a little less vitriol. But again, I understand it. And, you know, again, usually there's some time passes. And, you know, I do write about what they do. And it doesn't, even an exchange like that, it doesn't impact, I try to make sure that it doesn't impact what I do. So I don't have a grudge against him. I don't have issues with the woman who wrote me the other email. I mean, I get it, and I have to set that aside. Because I'm looking for good stories, for one thing. And if you've got a good story I can get in the paper, I don't care what you've written to me. I want to get that in the paper. You know, that's my job. There was somebody who, the woman who ran the Playhouse before Asia, used to joke about poisoning my food, and I really hoped that was, he would say, let's go have lunch, ha 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 ha. And I was like, okay, I get to pick the restaurant, and I will get there first. But that appears to have always been a joke. So my food, I don't think was ever poisoned. She actually, they had done Pajama Game a few years ago, and someone else had reviewed it, and she asked me to come and see it because they'd changed their sound system, and she wanted me to see the sound system. And jokingly, she had said, you know, and if you don't like it, I just want you to hear the sound system. If you don't like the show, you can leave at intermission, ha ha ha. Okay. So I go to the show, and I would not leave a show at intermission because you don't leave a show at intermission. But I did move seats.
Tell them that.
You don't leave a show at intermission. Yes. That's so, unless you're ill. I left a show once because I got sick, once. But no matter what you don't leave an intermission. That's just so incredibly rude. But I changed seats because I was sitting next to somebody who was really squirmy, and I thought, oh my God, I'm uncomfortable, I'm sure she's uncomfortable. And I made a mistake of moving back. And so someone told the woman who ran the play that I had left. So I called her the next week thinking that we would have this ha 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 funny conversation and everything. And she said, well, I guess you didn't like the show. I said, what do you mean? I really, really enjoyed it. No, somebody said that you left at intermission. It's like, no, but you have a problem here. If I'm the most interesting thing in this room, that's a problem. Nobody should be paying attention to what I'm doing. But it was also a good reminder that sometimes people are paying attention to what I'm doing, even if I'm just watching it without a notebook. It's like, okay, that's a good reminder. Hi.
Do you usually take a notebook and take notes during a play? Or
Yeah. I take a notebook and I scrawl notes in it, which is why I try not to sit. Every now and then they'll sit me on the front row, which is like, oh man, don't do that. Because I feel like then I'm a distraction to, because especially in small spaces, it's like, how incredibly obnoxious is that? Somebody like 4 feet away from you. So I try not to, if I can possibly, sit back. And I try to be unobtrusive about it as much as possible, and I try not to take excessive notes, because also that you can get lost in your notes. You know what I mean? It's sort of like you're not as absorbed in what you're doing. And that's actually another thing to take note of when I'm working. It's sort of like, if I've taken 9,000 notes, something's not right with this. That's a lot of paper, and that's a lot of me not absorbed. Death of a Salesman, there are not a lot of notes there. So, and after a certain point, I just put the notebook away. So see, now I've set this up, you're gonna go, you're gonna say, it's okay, it's all right. It's not that bad.
I set it up too. I was like,
Tony
and Alan are real good.
They are, oh my God. They're amazing. Yeah, I know, see, now, oh well.
Yeah,
Yes, yes.
What kind of things do you write down, like how interested you are?
What kind of things do I write, like the notes? If it's a play that I'm not familiar with, like if it's an original play, and in general, if it's an original work, I haven't read the script. If there's a line in it that I like, I might write that down because I might quote that if I could possibly read my handwriting later. I might take note. There was a little moment in Death of a Salesman where he pulls his fist back because he's about to punch his son. And Alan, like there was a hesitation and there was a look that crossed his face, like he kind of realized what he was doing. And I thought that was this amazing thing. So I wrote that down. If there are things that occur to me during the show, things that I want to make sure that I mention in the review, if there's a lighting effect that I think is really, really interesting, or that underscores a moment really well. Or, if there's something that I think, oh my God, why would you do that? I'll write, I won't write that, but, top hat, or whatever, I don't know why I've fixated on top hats now, but if there's like an unnecessary top hat, I might make note of that. If there's some weird costuming choice, I might make note of that, sort of like, what the hell, what's that about? Yes?
Have you ever been bribed to write a
That is a very good question. No, I have never been bribed. that is a stream of income that I had not even considered. So now I feel disappointed. No, I don't think anyone's ever like offered me anything. That is a very good question, though. Yes, no, I have never been bribed. I will say people are very nice to me, so maybe that's how they're bribing me. So that's a different form, I guess. Yes.
What would you say was the biggest thing you got out of your time at USC?
My time I got it. Oh, the Arts Journalism Fellowship. I got the tip. At the end of it, it was 10 days. So, and we saw, I don't even remember how many shows. We saw like a ridiculous number of theater, and there were these workshops and writing sessions. And at the end of it, one of the critics said, "You are not going to remember everything. You're just not." He said, "Just take a couple of things and hang on to those, because everything else is going to go." And Michael Phillips, who wrote at the time for the Chicago Sun-Times, he said, "When you're writing reviews, be specific and be brave." And I try to keep that in mind. I mean, I don't always hit that mark, but be specific and be brave. That's really good advice, because I don't want to, glow and rave about a show that's sort of middling. I don't want to send people to a show where they go, "What was that?" And being specific. I mean, it's not enough to say it was really good. Well, what was good, or it was terrible. Well, what was terrible? What specifically, what grabbed you, what little things? And the other thing was, if you've written something and you find yourself sort of chuckling at your own genius, you should probably just delete it. so that is also really good advice. Just in general, that is probably really good writing advice. Yeah. Yes.
What is it about the theater specifically that draws you to it, that you love writing about it so much?
I love the fact that it is so ephemeral, and that you can go to a show like the Death of a Salesman that I saw last weekend is not going to be exactly the Death of a Salesman that you see. I love that. And even, and the next Death of a Salesman that I see, because I will see it again, because it's a great play and people do it often, it will not be anything like this production. I like that it's never the same, that it evolves in the course of a production, that a director can look at this material that is, more than 50 years old and put a fresh stamp on it. I love that. I love those moments where you feel like everybody's kind of breathing together in the room. I love the communal aspect of it. I love moments where I was at a show at the Overtime recently where somebody was so shocked by what happened. What did she say? "Holy shit," or something like really loud, like someone in the audience. And it was like, okay, that is awesome. Those moments where people are so stunned that they gasp. Have y'all seen Beauty Queen of Lebanon? It's a Martin McDonough play. It's so good. This woman scalps her mother, and you find that out at the end of it. Her mother, who's terrible. I mean, really, the whole play is a case for that, really. But her mother's sitting in a rocking chair, and she pounds this like broom or something on the floor, and the chair tilts forward, and her scalp falls. And I think there was a scream in the audience the night that I went. It was like, yes, that is so awesome. That stuff where people are so transported by what they see, that's amazing. That's an amazing thing to be in that energy. That's what keeps you going through the stuff where you're thinking, well, oh, okay. That was okay, but not amazing. Yes.
One of the things that we haven't, no one's mentioned that we had a conversation about the last time we had class was how have things changed since we've gone from paper to digital? And the second part of that is that in your line, I mean, and maybe in other people's writing, does anybody pay attention to the clicks and the shares that your pieces get?
I think they pay attention. Nobody really has, to this point, said anything to me. I think it is going to get more and more important going forward. The space in the print product is much smaller, much smaller. So you kind of, like with Death of a Salesman, I mean, I would have loved to have had a lot more space. And there were things that I cut out of it myself before I sent it to my editor because I didn't want him to make the choices about what didn't get in. So that's frustrating. Now, the plus side is that it allows me to do those overnight reviews on the blog. I write for the Art Beat blog at mysanantonio.com, and after every show, I post a first impression. It's just like 2 or 3 sentences, just an immediate response. And I love that. I mean, because that gives, especially because it takes so long for us to get the reviews in print, that's something immediate you can go to. And I get a really good response from that. You know, I think digital allows us to expand our coverage in really exciting ways. But yeah, it also, though, the flip side sort of that is it also creates more work. Because, you know, like I've started doing these slideshows on Fridays. I post them on Fridays. Well, slideshow is a huge amount of work, but it is a ridiculous amount of work. But, you know, you're expected to produce content for this whole, you're supposed to produce content for 2 very different products. And you're supposed to do this in the same amount of time. Yeah, for the same amount of money. So, you know, that's a little frustrating. And we are supposed to be doing more and more specifically for the site. So, you know, I think that the job is changing and evolving. And you know, and eventually I'm sure it'll just be a site. You know, I don't know I don't think that's coming super soon, but, you know, I think that is the direction, again, as the space for the print product gets more and more condensed, you know. So yeah, a lot of changes. Yes.
Would you have ever wanted to write for like music reviews or movie reviews or anything like that, or is like theater your set?
I've done some music, but you know we have several music writers who do it much better than I do, so I don't need to do that. And I've written a little bit of film, but I kind of like well, for one thing, I like the live thing. I like that exchange of energy, and I also kind of like having some aspects of what I go to see entertainment-wise that I just go see, that I don't have to think, well, why would they do that? Why does Monuments Men suck so much? Though I did spend a lot of time thinking about that. But you know, I didn't have to take notes about it. It's kind of nice to just see something, although it's also kind of hard to turn off the part that says, okay, why does that suck? Or why is this amazing? You know, why did the movie August Osage County not work the way that the play did? Yeah, I know. It just doesn't, there's something, well, I think there were problems with the adaptation, but also there's an electricity to being in the space with the people who are doing this thing. And when the fight happens, it's like, oh my God. And I'm sure that not every production is like that. I'm sure that there are productions where people are saying, okay. But, you know, I've seen it on stage twice, and both times it was like everybody sort of stopped breathing. And it's like, wow, you know, like a mother and her daughter, like, actually physically fighting, and in the movie it was all right, but not, it's a little flat. Yeah. Yes.
When did you end up, or did you have like a conscious moment that you were like, I want to write in this way, or and when kind of did this happen? Was it something in high school or later?
You mean like writing art stuff?
Yeah.
Well, I did some cop reporting, and I'd already done some arts writing. And there was a story one night where this drunk driver ran this woman off the road. The car was parked on the side of the road, and he smashed into the car, sent it skidding down an embankment. It caught fire. There was a woman and her granddaughter were in there, and their bodies were fused. I mean, it was so hot. And we got a photograph of the driver. Like, they arrested the guy, like, almost immediately, and he's, like, laughing. I mean, that's how drunk he was. And I thought, okay, I don't know how much more I can write these kinds of things. You know, I mean, and I enjoyed the cop reporting because there was an adrenaline thing to it, and you're telling very real, very human stories. But it was really draining and really kind of like, I don't know that I have that much in me
Yeah.
for that.
A lot of kids have to go to class.
Oh, yes. Oh,
I'm
yes,
sorry.
yes, yes.
I'm
This
sorry.
was wonderful.
No, thank you so much for
Thank
coming.
you. Thank you so much.
Students at TLU engage in high-impact educational experiences that include civic engagement, aesthetic expression, critical thinking, and a focus on intercultural knowledge in a community that welcomes the interplay of faith and reason.